Yo, I was in the shower. Call me back.
What's up, everybody? I'm Josh.
I'm Jared.
And as always, we have the man behind the curtain, the wizard to our Oz, the man behind the ones and twos, BJ Robbins. What's up, BJ?
What's up, Beach?
So today, we've got another interview, another
very special guest.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is somebody we actually know. We know pretty well.
Good friend of ours. We met in Chicago.
Someone we both look up to. Somebody
Definitely.
who's done a lot of great things, things we wish we could do for people, and this guy's done
Super
it.
smart.
Yeah, and so, I mean, 99% of the time, Jared and I are just talking shit, and we're just having fun, and we just want to bring you guys some
Giving
sort of
our
laugh.
strong opinions.
Yeah, and just bring you some laughs, or maybe something to think about. But normally, we're not going to teach you anything about yourself or about how to make your life better, but the person we have on today can actually do that.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So we want to make sure we take the time here to get information for you guys and any kind of help and that you may need or want to search for. Maybe we can find those answers today, and
Or at least give you a little bit of a direction and maybe give you that little nudge to get you over the line to help yourself, because it's definitely important to me for mental health. For those that I've kept close to my life know that that's very important to me personally.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's changed your life
Definitely.
from when you went through a rough stage. So it's
For
good as your good friend and brother. I'm happy to see that.
Me too.
So this guest is a therapist who specializes in PTSD and ADHD, and he's got his own podcast, which we'll talk about too. But I think one of the great achievements is that he is married to a Grammy Award winner.
Yeah,
Our girl, Robin. Got to give her a shout out because I know she's listened a little bit. She's commented on some things. Robin's our girl, the sweetest.
Her.
And I'd say these guys are a power couple when it comes to our circle of friends. But we'd like to introduce our good friend, Dave Kessler. How you doing, Dave?
Well, hi, guys. That was incredible.
Yeah, well, we got to give you something good,
Gotta
man.
give you your flowers, man. You're the bomb. We love you.
So happy that you can do this.
No pressure. I'm just going to find all the answers, alleviate all the suffering. Let's do this.
What is life? Question mark. Here's Dave.
You're so naturally good at educating, and I've told you this the other day when we were talking, but I've told you this many times. You have this way of taking something deep and technical and just breaking it down, and I guess we could say decompactmentalize or what am I?
Decompartmentalizing.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man.
A+ communicator, Dave. Yeah, he's just very good at breaking something down into layman's terms for someone dumb like myself to kind of digest in smaller tidbits.
I've learned a lot, and I mean over the 15 years or so we've known each other. I went to, especially first moving to Chicago and meeting you. I came to you with opinions that come from a very small world raised, and there were so many thoughts and opinions I have today that were changed because of having conversations with you about things. So,
challenged.
So first, let's get started. We knew each other from the Nevins era.
Yeah,
Tommy Nevins. That's where we first met.
That's where we met, was at Tommy Nevins. So yeah, why don't you tell us about your time at Tommy Nevins and your experience of us there?
Oh my God. It's my pleasure to think about Nevins. I mean, this is where I have to be honest. The real reason I got a job at Nevins was because I had moved to Evanston. I was working at this place like Lamb's Farm, which was way out and way far away. Mm-hmm. And I was commuting all day and I didn't know anyone. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if I want to get to meet people, I should probably work at a local bar. And this place, Nevins, is walking distance for me. So I'll go take any job they have. So I walked in and I think the only opening that they had was for a host position for me to stand in the front and hand people menus and walk into the table. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone was expecting me to be like, oh, that's beneath me. But I was like, yeah. And so I worked as a host for...
You killed it.
About 6 months to a year, and then transitioned to a bartender. Yep. But I think hosting, it was great because I went all day long. I was working pretty intense behavioral psychology, helping people figure out how to live, do all these different things. And then all of a sudden I had to find people a table to sit down and eat. And I didn't even have to take their order. It was the best.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's when I met you, like transitioning to bar, I think is when I met you guys. And I think for me, like the service industry feels a lot like, I don't know, like we're in a battle together and you guys are in the trenches with me, you know, and like behind that bar, there's like this physical boundary in front of you. And like, they're not supposed to reach over and touch you. And like, you have this moving space. And I'll tell you, like on those St. Patrick's days or those parties or those times where like it was hit. Like it was really fun working with you guys.
Yeah,
really
sure.
fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Lots of good memories. We just did an episode about the service industry. And was talking about that, how when you're in a service and in the weeds with somebody, you feel like you've gone to war at the end of the night. And like that's what you want to decompress. You're having your post cleanup drinks and maybe play a pool, your vice of choice, whatever that might be, and definitely.
Yeah.
That's one of the good things about the service industry are the strong relationships you build with your coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that, and it's like a dice roll. Like, what kind of crazy stuff are you going to see today? Like stuff that you've never thought about, like potentially seeing before. Like things that don't like make sense independently, but like not when you put them together. Like people own birds. Yeah, that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
People don't bring birds into bars and sit with them as they're like therapeutic animals and have conversations, right?
Yeah,
but like we saw that.
I forgot all about that. The therapy bird. Yeah, the guy that came in with the therapy bird. I forgot all about that, dude.
So wild.
Or like times where like there would be arguments around musicians on which Irish instrument they were going to play, and it's like I would never see like an argument like this anywhere in the world except for right here.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then like, this is maybe evil. But like I loved everyone I worked with there. But at the end of the night, you get those people that get like, they've had too many drinks. They're not even thinking right now. Their brain's on autopilot. Like, give me another drink and whatever says no to me is going to get yelled at. Like there's not like a lot of like intense, complicated thought happening. Yes. And I really remember like one of my favorite parts of Nevins was like, can I use like the Jedi powers to like tell you like these are not the droids you're looking for, and like have somebody leave without like coming to fisticuffs. And like that made me feel like great. Every night I could convince someone to leave. I loved that.
For sure.
Putting out fires.
Yeah. That's part of the job, man. You got to be, that's like probably great therapy practice, de-escalation. I mean, that's what I get. I go back when we were just talking about the service industry. I caught a lot of grief from my buds in my group chats about the mandatory 2-year service industry enrollment for all Americans. But I'm telling you, every retail worker in this country is better at de-escalation and conflict resolution than all of the police officers in this country.
Well, there's
like all of them.
There's better training for it than what
because they have to do it to keep their jobs. Cops don't care.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting point around like how we build tolerances, right? Like through exposure. Like you have to experience stuff to like, get thicker skin. And like anyone in the service industry has to deal with some of the most irrational stuff like in the world. Like you have to have a really thick skin or you're not working in the service industry for long. I don't know if everyone needs to do that. But like I do, like you're just like on the side, like I'm listening to the show. I love it. Like
I said just last night that
tacos are sandwiches, and service people like probably should be mandated by the government to work, but maybe not in the service industry, like AmeriCorps or like other things. But everyone should be doing like 2 years of civil service.
That's what I'm saying. I told the guys in the group chat when they were giving me grief about what I say, there's an entire army of Karens in this country that would vaporize like a vampire in sunlight under the wilting power of one Mother's Day brunch.
Yeah.
If they had to work it.
Oh my God, yes.
They would just wilt and die and cry in the corner because another Karen asked them for 3 sides of ranch and they only brought 2.
There is a very real part of working in the service industry where I think you have to experience like lots of little deaths.
Yeah.
Like I can't experience it another way, but like there's a 16 top in front of you and like you're on it, but then there's like some weird problem where someone like, I don't know, does something bad and now you have to change your smock or you got to get a new like apron or you lost your billfold. And so it takes like 5 or 10 minutes to do that. And then you come back and like, they don't have silverware and then all the food's like back it up and then it all gets cold and then you realize you forgot someone's dish and like everything goes wrong. But the weirdest part that like you don't have to experience anywhere else in society is like you have to keep going back to that table and telling them about how you messed up.
Yeah.
And they keep yelling at you.
Yeah.
And it's like this
Gotta take your medicine
for like an hour and a half. You're like, I'm not getting tipped.
Yeah.
They're hating me. I still have to show you.
You're losing money that entire time. It's just such a crazy dichotomy for sure.
Well, and that's what helped me is because I was a person who was quick to just be like, yeah, fuck it. Walk away from things like that. That was forcing me to have to keep going back and facing the dragon, you know, facing the issue and then learning how to deal with it. And then after time, I was able to get yelled at and this and that, and then find a way to fix everything. Then by the end of it, when the people are leaving, they're apologizing. We're kind of laughing about everything, and it's like, no, you guys, you know, and then you don't. There's not a bad write up. There's no bad energy. They come back. You know, and that is a skill that you have to learn. And like you said, the first thing you have to do is you have to get a thicker skin.
Yeah. You grow a little deader inside after each shift in the service industry, you know, just a little bit basically.
That helps out a lot.
Little parties, it dies and it doesn't get hurt again.
Yeah.
It's like an angel gets its wings every time you put a star on a Christmas tree. It's like every Sunday brunch, you know, server dies a little bit inside and becomes a cynic. You know?
For every time you get called a jag off or so, you know.
Yeah. What are you, stupid? That was my old thing about Nevins is like they always didn't realize that we're here working at Nevins. You were taking, you know, graduate level courses in your behavioral therapy and doing a very intensive, you know, educational things. We had like a chemist who worked there, you know, master's program students at Northwestern and one of the most prestigious academic places in the world. And they're coming in, you know, calling us stupid because we, you know, forgot their onion rings. Like, kiss my ass, bro.
Yeah, it's just
get some perspective in life.
My favorite was when someone would say something utterly, completely wrong, but call you stupid. Like, why would you make a mimosa with champagne and orange juice? What are you, stupid? Where's the rum? And you're like, you're right. Yep. Okay.
You got it, bro.
Yeah, let me throw some rum in that for you then. Joy.
One of my, I got to say this. Can I say like one of my, like the moments where I felt my mouth open and I couldn't, I'm a really optimistic, you know, person. I say like, I believe in hope all the time. Like if the table's getting bad, I'm like, I can fix it. Like that's me. Right. And so the time where like something happened and zapped my brain. I like wine. I'm a wine person. It's nice. Red wine for the win. This person came up to the bar and was like, I'd like to try some of your wines. And I think this is a baller move because if you want to try places' wines, like they should give you a little sip so you can taste the wine before you pick which one you want. And so this person like was tasting all these different white wines, which is a very delicate flavor. Like you're tasting nuance in that thing. Like, and they're tasting these 3 or 4 different kinds of white wine. And then they go, that's the one I want. That one I go, okay, great choice because I'm here to validate your decision. I don't care.
Exactly.
They pick that one, and then they take a piece of gum out of their mouth and say, "Do you have somewhere to put this?" and I remember thinking, you just went through the process of tasting all of these wine with mint gum in your mouth before you picked the wine you wanted.
You double mint idiot.
I'll take your gum. Thank you for like. It was just like I remember my mouth just dropping.
Enjoy your $6 glass of Riesling.
Yeah.
I love it. One of the great stories I love from Nevins is when we, with me and you, is we worked like every Sunday session together for years as well. So I would be in there handling the football crowd, and then Josh picked it up after you were gone. But yeah, we worked the Irish music session, which was traditional Irish music. Shout out John Williams. Yeah. And then I would be in like the bar TV area running all the football crowd and whatever. But the great story for me and you that I love is when you and I went out to the grand opening of Nevins Naperville together. And we had the free drinks. It was an open bar for friends and family. And we were out there opening the new restaurant. It was big. It was great. It was grand. I had like 5 old fashions and was absolutely canned. Just wasted whiskey wasted. Yeah. And I don't remember if Dave was driving. I believe Dave drove out there and was going to drive us home. And we were getting wild and rowdy in the parking lot, and like Dave's a built person. He's short, shorter than me, which is pretty typical, you know, but he's much stronger than me. And was a wrestler growing up. And I didn't really know that, and I was kind of playing out around in the parking lot, and I'm like, I'm going to shoot the takedown on you, Dave. I'm going to do it right here, right now. And was just being very matter of fact, whiskey wasted, and I did. I shot for the takedown. And let me tell you, folks, he's got an excellent sprawl because he just absolutely sprawled my face directly into the pavement. And I just like woke up the next day and had this huge like raw road rash down the side of my face from the parking lot.
Dave just rode his face down to the ground.
And he was just like, he was apologetic, but was also laughing his ass off because he knew it was coming.
Well, and that's something he'd done hours of training, and
I
so
am
it's
not a
just,
wrestler.
No, and it's just somebody shoots at me. This is what I do.
7 inches taller than him. I'm wasted.
Oh, can I clear this up just a little bit? Just the backstory?
Yes.
Okay, I'm crying right now. I have done a ton of like wrestling and like in school and like had offers of intent from colleges. I was recruited as a wrestler. And then I did MMA in undergrad.
Okay.
Lots of this like
poor decisions.
I was drinking the night that we were at the Open. I didn't drive that day because I was kind of like, I'm going to let it loose.
Yeah.
And you look at me and you go, I'm going to take you down. And I said this. I go, don't.
Yeah.
That's right. And then you said, no, I'm doing it. And I go, please don't. And I'm holding a drink. And I'm like, please don't. Don't do this. I'm good at this. And you go, you're mine. And you shot the double leg. And it was like this moment. I don't even remember my response. Like, you know, anyone that does a repetitive motion thing all the time, like you catch the ball. You don't really think I'm going to move my arm to catch the ball. Right. Like the next thing I knew, I had bounced back, still had a drink in my hand, and you're on the ground with your head bleeding, and I'm going, whoa. This is not what was supposed to happen.
The worst decision. I mean, that's why I quit drinking, folks, man. I was, I just, no filter. Every poor decision sounded great. Like, I'm going to shoot the takedown on this person who I obviously should. I'm going to headbutt this elbow right here. Just dumb.
Wait. So that was my memory of you, Sherry. Like, we were at Nevins, and it was like this day where you had been like off. We were all imbibing. And then you were like, I forget. I don't know if it was me or somebody else, but you're like, I'm going to split your elbow open with my head. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, that's a terrible idea. And then like a few minutes later, you had a little cut on your head and like, it was in fact a terrible idea. Fast forward to the Nevins thing where I'm like, he's going to shoot. Like I knew you were going to do it. I was really trying to get you. Not like I had seen the elbow. Like you have no fear. Oh, that was amazing.
Story. I love that you told him don't. Like, please don't.
Please don't.
Like, this is not a good idea.
Just like grinning like a Cheshire cat, have no idea what's coming. But I learned.
Yeah.
I learned.
I mean, you may have not had a good time when you were drinking all the time, but everyone around you always had a good time with you when you were drinking. You're a good time drinking.
Everybody seemed to have good times around me, but I usually.
You are a really, but I'll be serious, like Jared. You're a really good person. You're a really nice person. That comes out. Like you are a person that I would feel very comfortable with when they're drinking, when they're sober, doing anything. And I think like it goes for you too, Josh. But I think like. Whether you're drinking, whether you're smoking, I think like it's very easy to demonize or put like a really big judgment on like all of drinking is wrong or all. But I think it's about who you are. Right. And like both of you guys are really good people. So like, did you drink a little too much at a time? For sure. Did you stop? For sure. But you've been a good guy like the whole time. If that makes sense.
I appreciate that.
That was one thing with we would get in trouble, but we never set out to hurt people. We didn't really ever get violent. If we did get violent, it was with each other because we'd known each other so long, and that's just what we would do. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we had some good times, man.
That's what you do in your 20s, and you know, like I mean, we were all like in our 20s, and we were crazy, and we were working in a bar, and that's what you did. We cut loose. We had a good time. Lots of great memories. But I had to share that one.
It's a good one.
That one stuck out in my mind when I think of you all the time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was just such a poor decision by me. But
I just love that he was like, "Don't,
please don't."
Like he's giving you your warnings. Just don't.
Love that. That's great.
So, Dave, let's go back to your beginnings and then get us into where you're at now and how you got to this point. So, just tell us a little bit, however comfortable you feel, and how much ever you want to get information you want to give us. But where did you grow up, and how was your growing up?
It was a warm summer evening in the 1970s when my mother met. No, I'm just kidding. So I think the best way to like start an origin story is I am really lucky to have like grown up with the family that I grew up in, specifically the brother that I had. Got to change it, right? Yeah. And I think that for me, it was always about like my brother wanted to save the world, change the world, make a difference, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, I'm 5 years younger, so I'm like, I'm gonna make the difference too. Like I'm just kind of like going in the footsteps. I don't really understand what they are.
Yeah.
My dad was a teacher. My mom and dad met like doing Chicago politics. Like, so they're like very like socially minded people in different ways.
Wow.
And I went, I'm also a person that has like several learning disabilities. Raising my hand, right? I have ADHD and this thing that's basically like dyslexia. That symbol recognition is a little more sophisticated, but like I can't spell very well. Like, okay. So school wasn't always the easiest thing for me. And so I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go to like these fancy schools. I wanted to go to Cornell because that was a school that my brother wanted to go to and didn't get in. Yeah. And like, I'm going to do all these things differently, but like I am failing out of high school. I got kicked out of high school like 2 years in. And I went to this like really fancy, prestigious high school, like very nice. You don't really get kicked out of high school with that high school. You go to college, it has like one of those 99%, like everyone goes to college from that school.
Right.
Like if you think about like those old movies, the John Hughes movies, like Risky Business or like all that's the high school that I went to. Sure. Right. So I got kicked out my junior year. And it was the first time that I went to like the school for kids with behavior problems. And they're like, you're a bad kid now. And like, realistically, like I was a kid that like really wanted to be a hero and I wanted to ditch classes. So I fought bullies and I ditched classes. That was my game. It doesn't bode well for your grades. Just spoiler alert. That hurts your grades. So I got kicked out, went to a school for kids with behavior problem, but it was actually the first time I ever got any kind of accommodations for my learning differences, which is crazy to think about.
Right.
Didn't know it then.
Yeah.
Got it. So the second semester of my junior year through the end of my senior year, I got straight A's.
Awesome.
Before that, I had a 1.8 GPA.
Oh, wow.
I know how that is.
Difference.
That's what
that's what I was.
My parents
rocking.
pulled me out of my freshman year of high school as well. When I was going to Seymour, we'd moved out of the country to Freetown. They had to pay out tuition for me to continue going to Seymour with all my friends. And then that freshman year of high school, I cut classes. I got a 0.8 GPA my freshman year. Just didn't do any work, cut up. And they were like, yoink, pulled me right out of high school and put me in Brownstown.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And whenever people tell me like, I got a 0.8 or what, like it's impossible I don't think it's often, it's not easy to take and do all the work and get those grades.
I know.
Yeah.
Like you only get those grades if you just like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know
exactly.
why, but I'm a teenager and I'm not doing it. Like, it's hard.
Yeah. So dumb.
So I ended up doing good enough in this like alternative school to get into college.
Great.
And like, being in Chicago, the area that I grew up in, everyone goes to college. Like there's the weirdest pressure there. Like if you didn't go to college, they would look at you like a pariah. Like where in other towns, if you went to college, they'd be like, why are you leaving us? Like it was a very different kind of place. So I felt I had to go to college and I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to teach special education. That's what I wanted to do. Right. Because teachers save the world. They touch 30, 40 students, like, a year, and those kids grow up and they make differences in the message. Like, I want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I think I said I have ADHD, right? So here's the impulsive part. I never actually thought about what teachers, like what they have to do. I thought about what they do. Right. So like I got through working to be a teacher, right? All the way up until this place where you have to take this like basic skills test. And then like you start teaching the student teaching the next year, like all those classes. And I'm in this class that's prepping you to take this test. And I like raise my hand and the teacher's like, well, yes, David. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just waiting. Like, when are we going to learn like how to build our own curriculum? Like, I want to bring my own books into this stuff. I don't want to just teach what they're teaching me. Like, how do I do that? The room laughed.
Yeah.
And they were like, you don't get to teach what you want to teach. And I'm like, why? I have a sociology degree. Like I've been studying systems and people because and they're like, and then laughter. Yeah. And I was like, and like, you have to teach what the district tells you to teach. And I cannot tell you like when that was said, it's almost like
crushed you.
The world slowed down. It was like, you have to teach. Like all of a sudden the world slowed down and like crashed in on me. And I'm like, I am done with this bullshit. Yeah. Like it was like immediately I couldn't make myself teach things that I knew were not accurate.
Right.
Like not even like thought maybe like new historical stuff that we know is not true. Like I could not teach that.
Right.
So I had this crisis of conscience and I spent like a couple weeks going like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? it went from I'm going to be a teacher to a special ed teacher to a medieval history teacher to like, I want to help do creative writing teacher. Like you can see, like I'm influenced by all these movies and shows. I want to save the world. Like, but I'm going to be a teacher. That's my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
This whole time I'm TAing at psychology classes because they're easy. And I'm forming a relationship with this teacher. Her name is Dr. Tara Cornelius.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember her, but she's amazing. So I'm glad I do. So she looks at me. She's like, "You ever thought about doing psychology?" And I look at this like very smart person. I go, "Oh my God, no. Like, what am I going to be, a therapist?" Ugh. And I made a face like that. And she was like, "Yeah, you're good at it." And like, what kind of offended is like yes, as someone should. And I said, "I wouldn't want to do that. This stuff is too easy. Like, no respect in this game." And then she kind of said, like, "It's not easy for everyone." Yeah. And I thought, like, that's dumb. And then I went home and talked with all my friends and like, what can you believe this, Dr. Cornelius person? And like, then I realized like, maybe I should just try to do the thing I'm good at.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want to be a therapist. What else can I do with psychology? The moment I started in psychology, I got straight A's for the rest of my life. It was like exactly what I was supposed to do.
You just
I have
found
a very
you
strong
found your calling. You found
training in something called behavioral psychology, which is science. I'm just going to like this, like the behavioral psychology. It's not like the foo-foo, like, we think it's your mother. Like none of that stuff in behavioral psychology, right? Like, it's like, how do we make you not burn your hand when you touch the stove?
Yeah.
Like, how do you quit smoking? Like, it is very specific on like what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was like, oh, this is too easy.
Too easy. Wow.
Yeah, like it's this thing that turns into like stereo instruction science. And I'll say something really dumb and complicated now, but like stimulus response reinforcement, and then it's like the fixed interval ratio of the reinforcement, how often they get it, the intensity of it, and once we get that done, like behavior's fine.
Oh yeah, of course. Everyone knows that.
It's a very boring way to do work. Like, oh, you are thirsty. I'll give you water once an hour, every hour, and then you won't be thirsty anymore.
Right. So once you find the solution orients, it's simple in that respect from a macro view.
Like 100%, Jared. But it's not only simple, but like in behavioral psychology, if someone doesn't get better, they blame the person. You're not doing it right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
That's not right for me.
Yeah, that was the trouble with me when I had to go through like cognitive behavioral therapy. Like it took me a long time to figure out what to do. I was doing these groups and I was doing these mindfulness exercises. I'm like, am I doing this right? Because you have no frame of reference. You can't tell someone, how your brain is thinking or working. You can try to describe it, but you can't open the side of your head and be like, hey, take a peek in here and tell me what's going on. Like, how's this working? That was the hard part for me personally. Mm-hmm. Is like, am I doing this right? This feels weird. This feels wrong.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying is like so much about like, I just want to be like #facts, because we are not born with instruction manuals. Mm-hmm. We're actually born with like lessons that don't work, but we're told they should work regardless. But just ignore it. Don't feel it. Keep going. And everyone models like, I'm not anxious, or it takes courage. But no one sits down and goes like, oh yeah, courage only happens when you're terrified.
Right.
Why wouldn't someone say that to you growing up?
Yeah.
You have to have courage. It makes it sound like you shouldn't be scared. And when you're not scared, then you're experiencing courage, right?
Right.
What? So I'll long story short the rest of this, because I don't want to make this about my origin story, but from understanding psychology, I got really into my parents and brother challenged me to go to a really prestigious university. I decided to apply. I actually get in. It was kind of weird. I start working with a national non-for-profit called Project I that works with middle school students at the time and college students. They match them up with the same learning disability. They start doing work together. Started a chapter in Illinois. Started doing speaking for them around the country. Mm-hmm. Started doing lobbying for Congress around IDEA and issues around how to protect people and fight ableism.
Awesome.
/ while all that's happening, I'm getting deeply invested in the neurobiology of trauma, PTSD. I have a degree in sociology, so I got really focused on how to take this learning and apply it to the world. So my brother and I teamed up and did research in southern Thailand, looking at trauma acquisition and how people got traumatized through a war between Buddhist extremists and Muslims. Started working at a place called the Center for Contextual Change after school. Started writing or helping to make trainings for Israel, Palestine, if a plane crashed in Sweden. Really doing pretty amazing and really fun trauma complicated work. And then Like now I'm, a clinical director. I have my own, co-founded an agency, love everyone that I work with. And I'm in a place now where I get to do like trainings around like ADHD, helping people understand neurodiversity, helping people understand trauma, helping people understand group dynamics, like how people need to get along. Like this is what I do now. And I love it. And I think like one of the things you guys know about me is I really want to take the scary, terrifying parts of therapy away, because I, I don't like, I don't think like sick people should go to therapy. I just want to say something really hyperbolic. I think everyone should go to therapy.
That's what I say.
And then I want to say, I'm in therapy.
Me
I go to
too.
therapists every week.
Yeah.
I am not like destroyed by it, but I'm going to challenge anyone to tell me where you can get really unadulterated, non-biased, non-judgmental insight every week.
Right. Yeah, you said it, man. I mean, I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Hashtag, yeah, go therapy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was why I personally was so excited to bring you on in this episode. And thank you for sharing all that information.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an incredibly robust resume, as everyone
Yeah.
can see. And that's why it's so great. And for me personally, I mean, when I was going through the beginning of my depression, I thought that there was something physically wrong with me. I was having endoscopies and colonoscopies. I was going to the hospital and having blood work. I thought I had a disease or something.
Yeah.
And honestly, having conversations with you and with Rohit and my friends, it was finally to the point where I think everybody realized, except for me, that maybe this was a mental issue. And, getting that help there and going through that was the hardest period in my life. I mean, I was dying for a while. Like I lost,
you were getting
60. I lost 60 pounds, man. I was down to 160 pounds, and I hadn't been that skinny since like junior year of high school, man. I was dying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, therapy saved my life. And like, again, yeah, I still go to therapy once a week. Anybody who asks me about it, I'm like, go, so I was super excited to have Dave on and, try to get rid of any of that stigma, because I know just from where we grew up here in the Midwest, and I'm sure being relatively the same age, we touched on this. Dave and I played Dungeons & Dragons together in a couple campaigns as well. We had a quick conversation last night about the machismo and stigma of males specifically of our age. We still kind of got that from our parents, where we don't like going to the doctor, or we don't like telling people we're sick or we're hurting or we're sad or we're lonely, and just like we need to kick that stigma in the ass and get rid of it, man, because don't suffer in silence. And yeah, just get the help you need. I mean, call me, I'm not a professional, but I'm happy to take that burden on for anybody who needs it.
And just find somebody to, I mean, sometimes you just need to talk. You just need to say what you're feeling, and sometimes it's just good to have somebody, like you were saying, that's not super biased. That's not going to protect you. They're not going to say what it is that you want to hear at the time. It's what you need to hear at the time.
Right.
And sometimes
that's what I really got out of it, is someone being able to hold a mirror up to me and call me on and break down my walls that I've put up, call me on my conflicts and my hypocritical nature, you think everything's bad every day, but you just bought a house, you've just got a new job, you're taking care of 2 new dogs, like you've done all of these things, why don't you see that? And I'm just like, hey, yeah, you're right.
Those are real things. Yeah.
Yeah. I did do those things, and that makes me feel better, So it's just like getting that perspective for me is critical, is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Just having your focus put somewhere else. All right. So now that we kind of got your origin story,
that was great.
Now that we have an understanding of who Batman
is,
so
robust and awesome.
So we know that like PTSD comes from trauma that you deal with while being alive, things like that. So with ADHD, a big question I have, and I think a lot of people have, is this something that you're born with, or is this something that is brought into your world through other traumas and things of that nature?
What a great question. like I'm just going to be like, that's a great question. So just like you're saying, trauma is a reflex. It's a neurobiological reflex. We cannot pick what traumatizes us. We cannot pick what upsets us. Right. It can intellectually not bother you and traumatize you. It's very strange to think about, right? Huh. It's around whether or not what you're seeing breaks the technical term here is cognitive schema. But what that really means is like if it breaks a written rule that you have, like the sun rises and the sun sets is like this written rule, right? So if the sun were to rise one day and then all of a sudden it never sets, like I would lose my mind. What's happening? Like permanent day. Like it would be traumatizing, not because I'm scared of the sun or I have any kind of aversion to sunshine or that I'm like, but it's that it's supposed to be night and it broke a rule and that could be traumatizing.
Right.
Right. So ADHD is part of what I want to say is cognitive diversity. It would not make sense for a population on this planet to have the same brain.
Right.
And ADHD, this is a very, I'm so glad to be able to talk about it. It is not actually a part of mental illness at all.
Okay.
So ADHD is characterized as a medical difference because fundamental parts of the brain are built differently. There's actual different built like cortical structures. Basically, cortical structures means like highways that connect different parts of your brain. Like they're physically different. They're bigger. They have like cooler lighting than a neurotypical or a quote unquote normal person.
Right.
So everyone is born with or without ADHD. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Based on the environmental variables that you experience, it can activate it or not activate it.
Wow.
Okay.
So like some people with ADHD don't know they have it until they graduate high school or graduate college. Now they don't have the structure of the classes and what to do. And now they're supposed to do whatever they want to do. And the natural accommodation of the structure in their life disappears. Or they don't realize they have ADHD until they have kids. And then the natural structure that they built, I go to work, I play this volleyball game, I work out here, all that disappears. And now you experience a lot more inattention or a lot more issues because there's serious environmental changes.
Wow. Huh.
So you're born with it, but just because you're born with it doesn't mean you're deficient. It means you're different. And it's like one of those weird things. One of the reasons I love working with ADHD is like, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'll tell person X, you have ADHD. And then like, they go, oh God. And you can tell that they feel horrible about like
labeled. They don't want to be labeled.
Right. And it's a stigma. Like
it's a stigma of the
frowned
label,
on thing.
for
Yeah.
sure.
But because it's a medical thing and not a psychological thing, the closest parallel to ADHD would be like nearsightedness or farsightedness.
Really? Oh, wow. That's a cool distinction.
Because if you didn't have your glasses on and you were sitting in class, what would happen to your attention on the board?
Right.
Yeah.
It would go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we know kids that have problems paying attention. We actually give them hearing and sight tests because if you can't hear well or you can't see well, it impacts sustained focus as a kid.
I swear that's why my brother is the way he is, and he dropped out of high school as a sophomore, but I think the reason why he started, he had a lazy eye that went undiagnosed until a very young age, and then we were very poor when we were growing up and couldn't afford the best glasses, so he couldn't see the chalkboard and stuff, and I think that's why he just never really took school seriously since then.
It would absolutely impact your ability to focus on something.
Right.
And so like, not to get too far into the weeds for ADHD, but ADHD is this neurological difference. And like, can I like describe like what that looks like for a second? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's your stage.
Imagine the brain. Like I'm holding my forehead, like I'm touching my forehead, like your whole brain. We know what parts of your brain is working based on where the blood is flowing in your brain, right? So if the blood like flows into your forehead, we know you're paying attention to the world around you. You're reading stuff. This is called your prefrontal cortex. Like that's paying attention. When blood leaves your forehead and goes into your back and your like the middle of your brain, you are not able to focus. Your body is focusing on life support systems.
Right.
This is a neurobiological reflex. If any of you know how to make your blood move in your brain, please teach me so I can teach people. But like it happens. It's a reflex, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So when they took a bunch of people and they put them in these fMRI machines, functional magnetic resonance imaging, it doesn't blah, 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 blah. What it means is we can see blood move real time in the brain.
Right.
Like we can see where it goes. So they take one group of people and they go, all right, see that red dot on the wall? And the group of people goes, yes, we see that red dot. These are all normal neurotypical people. And they go, focus on that red dot for like 2 minutes. And they're like, bet. And they like, thumbs up. They start focusing on the dot. And like, while they're focusing on the dot, the blood, they're getting their, fMRI, they're watching the blood pour into the front of the brain.
Right.
And it's pouring into their brain. They're going like, I'm looking at a dot. It's circular. They've asked me to stare at this dot. I'm not going to move my eyes. The dot isn't moving. Like they're constantly attending again and again to that dot. That's a normal person.
Right.
So they took an ADHD person, brought them in the same room. They're being monitored, and they go, look at that dot. And the ADHD person goes, I'll look at that dot. And they look at the dot. And the second they look at the dot, the blood pours away from the front of their brain. It goes into the sides and the back. And they look at the dot and go, all right, I'm looking at that dot. Did I turn off my oven? I didn't turn off my oven. Better not move my head. What am I supposed to? Looking at the dot. I'll look at the dot. I'm looking at the dot right now. Everyone does it. Oh my God. Am I breathing? Can they see my sweat? My heart's beating, isn't it? It's not beat. Did you see that game last night? Oh my God. Does this person like football? They like football. Has it been 2 minutes? It hasn't been. Right. That whole time, your brain is not reattending to that red dot.
Right.
Right.
The focus is because there is nothing dangerous or important about that red dot. An ADHD person could not focus on that red dot. Could not. But can I flip this for a second? Now I'm going to go to like the foo-foo land where it's
this
like,
is good.
all right, so imagine they go, the same situation's all real. Two groups of people, red dot on the wall. But at the end of the thing, they go, look at that red dot. If you're not looking at the red dot, you're going to get shot with a cannon.
Okay.
Right?
A little more consequences.
The blood changes in the head right now.
Yeah, like little risk. So the normal person would be like, I don't know if I want to play this game. Holy shit. And then they might be like, I'm looking at this fucking dot, but like, where's the cannon? And then it's like, you look away. Like, because their brain is going to be looking at where's the danger? What's going on? It's a normal reaction. Because anxiety impacts executive functioning. You're seeing where I'm going. So the normal person would turn into an ADHD person under tremendous threat.
Right.
They would be like, I don't know what to do. They'd be like very scared.
Yes.
Now we flip it. We put the ADHD person in the room and they're like, all right, so if you don't pay attention to that dot, you're going to get shot with a cannon. And they're like, cool. And now it's like, you're looking at that dot. Now the blood is going to stay in the front of the brain. There's risk. And an ADHD person's reinforced by attending or walking towards risk. They can focus more. And so like, what would make sense if you were like trying to develop a species that was like going to like be around for a long time? Would you want to make it so that if there was a forest fire, no one knew what to do? Or would you want to make like a third of the population be like, oh, I'm going to run towards that fire? Like you would make neurodiversity be part of like the human experience. So like we don't get destroyed by one thing. And so like, going all the way back, sorry, Josh, is like, is ADHD like something that you acquire? No, but you can get symptoms later in life because you lost like accommodations.
That's interesting. So it can just be kind of unlocked, turned off, turned on based on your environmental and life factors. That's a very interesting take.
Well, I mean, it goes to show the brain and everything around us.
It's
and
crazy.
How everything, the information that is, whatever information is put into our brain, it affects differently.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Can I like make this even crazier for a second?
Yeah.
Oh, please.
I love this. Okay, so there's this really fancy term called epigenetics, right? And what epigenetics means is it's actually like more like we know that there's a couple different theories of evolution. There's like Lamarckian or there's Darwinian evolution. We don't have to go into the weeds with this, but basically there is a branch of evolution that looks at how one generation to the next can actually physically change.
Yeah.
And that actually changes through something called epigenetics. And so they did this study. They took this female rat, super great rat, great, robust, like she's a powerful rat. They put her in this cage and they released this neutral smell, which means like the rat has never smelled this before. It is not either bad or good. It's just a new smell. The moment they release the smell in this female rat, they bash its tail with a hammer. And the rat's like, what the heck? And then they release the smell again and they bash the tail. And they release the smell again and they bash the tail. And they do this over and over like weeks. And then at the very end, they release the smell and they cut off the rat's tail with a knife.
Oh my gosh.
Rat's like, we are really trying to train trauma into a rat.
Yes.
This is exactly what we're doing. And they're trying to make it associated with that smell, right?
Right.
So then they take that rat out of the cage. They put it back into their rat playground. By the way, it's actually called a rat playground. It's like this giant rat enclosure with like lots of rats that have fun and they run on wheels and they drink water and they have enrichment stuff.
Sure.
They put her back in this playground. Within a couple of days, she meets this really handsome, emotionally available male rat.
Okay.
They end up having a bunch of rat babies. And this is when the research starts again.
Okay.
The moment these babies can open their eyes or can move, they are scooped out of the playground and they are put back into that special box.
Smell time.
And the smell. that they've never smelled before, only their mom smelled before they were born,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is released. What do you think these little baby rats do?
They're developing trauma.
They have a reaction to fear.
They have like a fear
They
and trauma reaction.
freak out. Yeah, they start running around. The smell is like, oh my God. But do they know they're freaked out because of the smell?
No.
No.
They just know something.
An environmental change happened that activated a response.
Right. Wow.
Just like
On a
ADHD could be
genetic
activated.
level.
And so like when we look at ADHD, when we look at trauma, when we look at the history of like trauma with people or the history of like ADHD, it looks way more complex and powerful on like the real roles that the environment plays. And then I'm going to get like really like hyperbolic about this, which means I'm really learning to reframe a mental illness as you are allergic to oppression in a crappy environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's why I read something maybe just a few weeks ago that was kind of on this too, and it gave me some pretty good perspective about like parents my age, the baby boomer generation. They catch a lot of grief lately, and for good reason, in my opinion, for a lot of things. The okay boomer, blah blah blah. But I had a really crazy article I think I read, or maybe it was like a Reddit thread or something, talking about how the greatest generation, the World War II generation, raised our parents, the boomers. And you got to think about their environments and responses. They lived through the Depression. They lived through World War I, World War II. And those are horrifying, traumatic experiences that they then raise their children in to think, the sky is going to fall. The banks are going to fail. There's going to be war and famine and disease and terror.
World War III's coming.
And everything. And they instilled that into our parents who grew up in, the greatest prosperous, period of our history, always expecting that other shoe to drop. And I think that, that obviously informed our lives as well. And I always just thought that was really interesting and gave me a better perspective to kind of, cut boomers a little bit of a break to think about. Because when I think about my grandparents and what they lived through, and then like in turn raising my parents, that really kind of informed my view of them a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm like nodding hard. Yeah.
So now let's move into, now that we got this is
that
perfect.
was incredibly interesting.
This is perfect. So now that we have that, I want to talk about dopamine and the differences that dopamine has on each brain. So the PTSD, the ADHD, and then what we're calling, I guess, normal right now. Because we all want dopamine. Dopamine drives us.
It's the happy drug.
Yeah. Dopamine just it drives our, what you could say, our soul, our spirit. And so each one of these differences, though, mental differences, dopamine is chased differently, and it's also it affects it differently. So kind of go into detail here on what the difference is on when it comes to dopamine.
Oh my God, I love talking about this stuff so much. Okay, so
That's why you're here, man. We know you do.
I'm such a nerd. I love this stuff. Okay, so the best way everyone's brain responds to dopamine in about the same way. Let's think about that. Like it's a reflexive thing. Okay, and there are certain things that activate dopamine for everybody, right? Like a really great example is any blue light, any blue photon triggers dopamine. So whenever you're looking at a phone screen, a computer screen, a TV screen, you're getting dopamine.
Right.
What's different though is everyone has, like, think about like your brain has a bunch of cups and like there's a little line at the top of the cup. And like once the cup is filled to that line, you feel satiation. So the cup is holding dopamine. And then once you get enough dopamine, you're like, I am satisfied. I have had enough.
Good.
Insert here, like cheese fries, television, video game, like whatever it is. Like I have had enough. Some people, the size of that cup is different.
Sure.
So they might need more to feel satisfied. The issue with, and actually like people that struggle with addiction they need a lot more dopamine to be satisfied, right?
Yeah, addictive personalities.
But then we flip it for ADHD folks for a second. Okay. This is where it gets crazy. You give them like a larger size vehicle and it has a very high level for like satisfaction, but no matter how much dopamine goes into the cup, none of it stays.
Just got a hole in the bottom of the cup.
Just goes out right away. Never fills up. The whole time it's going into the cup, it feels good, but because it never gets to that line, you never feel like you've had enough of cheese fries, video games, whatever that thing is.
Which eventually becomes addiction.
Yeah.
is where addiction
Well,
comes
wait, no, spin it adaptively. Like what you said, it becomes hyper focus that can go into very destructive or good directions.
in. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Depending
the
on what
longer
you
you're
choose.
focusing on it, the more dopamine you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
But dopamine is the lying thing in the world. Like the social media has made the dopamine like not right. So
Right.
can I destroy dopamine for a second and talk about a different
do.
neurotransmitter? Okay. Dopamine is about how exciting it is to get the reward. It's reinforcing until the thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get the reward, dopamine's gone. So like the way to think about this is if I'm like, hunting and gathering and I see this like really slow deer that I can outrun and we'll make this deer like have some struggles in life. It's like, it's fast, but it's like not fast enough. So I'm running as fast as I can and I'm getting closer to that deer and I'm like jumping over rocks. And like the closer I'm getting to this deer as I'm chasing it, the more dopamine is pumping into my brain.
Right.
Yeah. Like I'm running towards the second I pounce on that deer, dopamine's at max. And I'm like stabbing the crap out of the deer. I take down this deer. I'm like, I am the king of the forest. Dopamine's gone now.
Right.
Gone. So you're not reinforced by what you just did.
Okay.
Which is why like when you order the thing from Amazon, you can't wait for it to get there and then it gets there and you forget about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Dopamine doesn't stay. It's only in the pursuit.
Okay.
The thing that actually makes you feel better or makes people feel better is this thing called norepinephrine. This is my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So Nora, she's an amazing, temptress in your brain, right? So Nora is your brain's manager. Norepinephrine decides, it's like basically evaluates, was this thing stressful? Was this thing successful? Was it good? Was it bad?
Mm-hmm.
So the moment you decide, screw everything, I'm staying in bed all day, I'm playing this video game, I'm not doing anything. And then at the end of the night, Nora evaluates your day.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know what that feeling, right? Like,
Yeah.
What did I do? I didn't do anything today. What the heck? I was such a lazy piece of crap. I got to get up. I can't do this to myself. I'm going to fit. Like, that's Nora beating you up because you don't appreciate what you did that day.
Right.
But if you had done several things you didn't want that day, and you'd be like, I played video games all day, and Nora would be like, that's lazy. And you'd be like, no, but I did these 8 things. And Nora would be like, you're right. Good job. I'm glad you had the relaxation. Like, that makes you feel better doing the things you don't want to do. We know this like scientifically, which
Challenges.
is really crazy. And norepinephrine can be manipulated by the way you think, and dopamine can't. And so if your brain's evaluation of success, right? So if you brushed your teeth, right, and you go in to see therapy and you're like, man, I'm having a really rough day. And the therapist goes, hey, did you brush your teeth? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, don't you feel good about that? And you'd be like, no, you're an idiot. Like, I can brush my teeth any day. Like, no. And like, if someone tried to make me feel better about brushing my teeth, I'd be like, you're treating me like a child.
Right.
Like, stop it.
Yeah.
But let's say you've been in traction because you broke both your legs and one arm and you haven't been able to brush your teeth for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you brush your teeth and I go, hey man, you brushed your teeth today. You'd be like, goddamn right I did.
Hell
Like,
yeah, I brushed them good. I brushed them so good. You'd be so
right?
proud.
Nora's like, you did a good job. I know how hard that is. So like the way you think about your own life has to do with the way you can access like satisfaction from living it, which is really weird to think about.
Yeah.
So I personally deal with imposter syndrome. It's something I've dealt with for most of my life. And so is my battle with Nora
Evaluating at the end. Yeah. That's
because a lot of my when it's gotten me good and it damn near breaks me, it's always at night. And a lot of times it's because at night is where I settle down.
It's where
and
you're
it's
with
like,
your thoughts.
and it's like, all right, now I'm going to go and do something that I just want to do for the last hour before I go to bed. The kids have been fed, they've been bathed, they're in bed, they're happy, they're going to school tomorrow. The wife is doing reading a book or doing a thing. So I'm going to go do something I want to do. And then I throw on a video game or I throw on a movie or something. And then 10 minutes in, my brain tells me, you should be doing this, this, and this. Why are you doing this? You're lazy. You're not ever going to achieve what your goal that you're chasing. This. And Megan's had to come down in the basement and ask me if I'm all right because she can hear me yelling at myself. Can I just play this fucking game for one goddamn hour? and then we'll go on and handle business later, and it's like I can't allow myself to not work. And our buddy Rowett gets on to me about that a lot because he'll come and visit. And then when we're down in the basement, I'm working. I'm trying to figure. And he's like, "Hey man, like let's just watch this TV show. Like you don't have to work." Well, if I don't work though, like I'm not going to achieve what it is. Like no,
Right.
like it's an hour, man. Like calm down,
You are battling Nora. That's just, wait, I don't want to be like that blunt. Yeah, because there is a call and response game, and like that voice, like the norepinephrine voice in your brain at the end of the day, it leans into like the messages we've learned growing up. It uses all the ammo that's worked to make you feel that way.
Yeah.
Like in the past. And then I'm going to talk about shame and guilt for a second, because that's the spiral that goes in. The most messed up thing about shame and guilt is that your brain is naturally reinforced for experiencing them.
Okay.
Think about that. When you are feeling horribly guilty or horribly shameful, your stomach's in knots, your body feels like crap, right?
Yeah.
Your brain is having a pina colada, enjoying it.
All
It is
right.
actually reinforcing to your brain, and it's discordant from your body. Why would our brain feel good experiencing guilt and shame?
To keep us sharp for future incidents of guilt and shame?
Okay, wait, this is actually kind of close. Like, Jared, 10 points Gryffindor. It does it because it's the only thing that keeps us connected to humanity. Okay. So, like, if we're hunters and gatherers, right? And, like, I've, like, taken down some, like, elk, and, like, we've been eating on this elk for 3 days, but now it's rotten and we know it's bad.
Yeah.
Why don't we just sell it to the tribe next door? Because, we had our use with it. It can't hurt. Like, I don't really care about them, but my brain is making me care about someone I don't know, preserving human life because of guilt and shame.
Right.
It's really important around connecting people.
That's interesting.
Guilt and shame are like on your limbic system, and this is where I'm going to get into this foo-foo therapeutic crap. So, like, I'm going to say a word that's going to make you all roll your eyes. But, like, okay. Guilt, shame, and gratitude are all tied into your brain's limbic system. Anything that you are feeling guilt or shame about, you can flip into gratitude, and that's the Nora intervention.
Okay.
So, like, but it can't be a lie. You can't be like, I'm a lazy piece of shit. I'm a horrible human being, but it's really nice out and I had a good day. Like, that will not, like, that
right.
Like, doesn't matter. You won't feel
That's
good.
Disingenuous, yeah.
But if you're like, I'm a lazy piece of shit, like, what kind of person am I? And then you're like, you know what? I'm allowed an hour. I worked really hard today. It's okay to feel like I need to do more work, but I'm really grateful I have time not to do work right now, and then I'll work tomorrow morning. Like, that gratitude can actually assuage the guilt.
Right.
And so it's working on, this is fancy talk, the existential or the, like, changing the meaning of these messages, or the call and response game to actually feel better in those moments. The other data point is days that you think like that might also be correlated with lower amounts of physical activity.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Like, if you sat all day and your body has a certain amount of like energy that it needs to burn off.
Right.
If you don't burn off that energy, then, like, anxiety, anger burns off that energy.
Right. Yeah.
Makes your heart beat faster, right?
Yes.
System moves.
Yes. Yes. This sounds familiar. I know what you speak of. Yes. That's very interesting. Well, I've never really, I mean, it is very familiar from my experience of, being in therapy very much. It's all about perception for me. And like that is, training your brain to view the world in a different way than it wants to, at least in my own personal experience. That's really what's helped me, because Mike made a joke the other night. It was like, oh, we had Jared finally showing his true cynical side a few episodes in. Oh, we're doing a cute little podcast about our small town here, and now it's like, fuck corporations. I encourage you to steal from them. Don't recycle. Mandatory 2-year service of service industry people.
And then I was like, yeah, but don't forget to be empathetic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like that's really my main struggle struggle with my mental health, and I've been pretty clear with that. I try not to make it a part of me. Like when I was in Chicago for a while, going through the worst of it for a while, I really kind of dumped on other people once I really realized what was happening to me.
But that's the thing. But you didn't understand. You realized, but you didn't understand.
Right, and I
And
was
that
really
when you don't understand comes frustration. It comes anger. That's how we deal with not understanding something.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people really are going through that and just don't even really realize it. And that's why I wanted to kind of just, give my own personal experience and definitely have Dave and, speak with some more expertise on it, obviously. Because, like I said, I thought I had a disease or a blood disease, an autoimmune disease or something was, physically wrong with me. But it was literally my brain manifested physical problems. It's that powerful. And I never really realized that, that it could do that, you know. So I just... I know for me personally, the main reason that I wanted to have you on is like, we spoke about it and touched on it a moment ago, that we have this stigma, the machismo of men, grin and bearing it, not wanting to give the help. Someone as a professional like you, what might you say to, John Q. Random, that might encourage them to take that first step, or might encourage them to get the help that they needed if they're having problems with, addictive problems, or, anxiety, depression, or not being able to focus or focus, creating habits, anything to kind of fulfill their lives? What might you say to someone who might be reticent to take that first step?
The first thing I'd say is there's so many reasons to be reticent.
Right.
Like, I would validate why it makes sense that it's not like, what are you, an idiot? Why aren't you in therapy? I'm in therapy.
That's my problem. That's what I do. I'm like, you're dumb. Get in therapy.
No, but it makes sense. How do you know you're in good therapy? How do you know it's working for you? How do you know someone isn't just taking your money? Mm-hmm. Why do I have to pay someone to feel better? There are all these really important thoughts, right, that kind of come in that we don't have answers for. Yeah. And I think it's one of those moments where it's how do you rip this thing open? It's you come from the back end. Right. I've always found that increasing understanding reduces suffering. Mm-hmm. The more we understand, the less it hurts.
Right.
I like to lean into neurobiological facts. Yeah. Because it's less about an opinion, and it's just more about A equals B equals C. And I'm going to say something that sounds insane right now. We don't make choices in our everyday life. We very rarely get to make a choice. We live in a very predetermined, fatalistic kind of way. We don't really have free will.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And everyone's allowed to be fuck you. Okay. Yeah.
I do that. Bullshit. I'm having spaghetti tonight instead of bologna sandwiches. That's free will.
Right. The best way that we can talk about how we experience free will in the world, right, is a fast food restaurant. You go to fast food restaurant X. You don't make a decision. You go to the drive-thru because you always go to the drive-thru, or you go in because you already go in. Mm-hmm. And you don't really make a decision once you're in there, right? There's one of 3 or 4 things you'll get, and it depends on the kind of day you're having.
Right.
I feel rich. I'm getting this. I'm kind of poor, but I need to pick me up. I'm getting this. I had we have all these preset conditions that make us pick things. Mm-hmm. And I think that it takes a very complicated amount of intention to even have a new thought.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if you're anxious, if you're not anxious, you cannot think of something you have not been exposed to.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Free will is contingent on you being able to think of anything at any time.
Yeah.
You can't think of something you haven't been exposed to.
Right.
So it's not your fault where you are. It makes sense that you're in pain. This isn't your fault. Society was not built to take care of you.
Right.
There's a lot going on that is not your fault. And the moment of choice that you have isn't all of these things you're going to do every day. It's, do you encounter something different? So are you going to go to therapy? Are you going to go try to start working out? Are you going to go to your church and talk to your pastor? There's other counseling that you can do.
Sure.
Or you're a mom or you're a rabbi. What are you going to do that's different?
Right. How are you going to break that cycle? Yeah. And that's
and then it's well, how do you know what you picked? How do you know it's going to work?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. That's crazy, man. Because I mean and going back to like Josh was talking about his imposter syndrome. You know, you've done a full day's work. You've reared your children. You know, you've done what you needed to do as a man. You know, emotionally, physically, financially. Why can't you enjoy yourself for that little bit of time? And see, for me, it's a little bit different. When I go and do things like this, like I love doing the podcast.
It's awesome.
This is great. When I talk about it in therapy, my therapist is like, that's so great. You know, like since Jim's passed away, it's been such a catalyst in my life to know that I can't just tick days off the calendar anymore. You know, it's just all about investing in that day. I mean, I'm not going to be productive and have a perfect day every day, but now I'm playing disc golf with my buds. I'm having the podcast with my buds. You know, I'm going to trivia with Richie and Joyce and doing that. I'm doing so much more social stuff now than I have in years previously, you know, and I have a hard time getting gratification from that. You know, in the moment I'm enjoying it, but then looking back, you know, I'm like it must be that dopamine thing that you were talking about. Like I'm enjoying it in the moment. It's great. I get my satisfaction when it's over. But then when I kind of reminisce and think back on it, I'm like, ugh. You know, I'm like, I feel that emptiness. I'm not getting that gratification. It doesn't feel good anymore. And I'm like, and that tempers my vision of it, and it kind of spoils it a little bit for me. And I'm like, no, I hate that. Like, don't ruin the good things in my life. You know, don't view them through that negative lens. And like, I'm constantly fighting that battle. That's like my ultimate battle with every day is just like, you know, taking off the horrible cynical glasses and giving myself a little bit of life, giving myself a little bit of vision of, you know, daylight and goodness and things like that.
I personally, I think for me, that's what helps get me through my days is that I'm pretty good at handling and doing things I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. I can find ways to do things that some people can think that are impossible or there's no way you can do that.
Get it done.
I've just always been able to do that. But for me, what helps me is understanding now and knowing what makes me happy and trying to do at least a few of those things a day that make me happy.
Right. Give yourself something.
Just to have something. And I think that's important. And I mean, that's one thing with my kids. I always tell them when they want to go play with somebody, go play with them, man. Go to their house as long as you're not bothering their parents. I don't want to I don't want to talk with the parents. I don't want you bothering them. But go find your joys and enjoy your the good times.
Yeah,
you know?
Especially when you're a kid.
What we know is it's like we know that enjoying the good times, that's like self-care. That's so important. What we're learning now scientifically is in order to make self-care feel better, you have to do things you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's so weird. If you only did the self-care, you wouldn't feel good. And if you were in the wrong therapist, you would think, I'm not feeling good. I'm doing all these self-care things. Mm-hmm. It's like, you got to do, they're called, this guy, Huberman, I like the Huberman Lab podcast. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. He talks about like, you need little yucks. Like if you did the dishes and you folded laundry, you would enjoy other things more.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the yin and the yang. It's the old yin and the yang idea. Like you have to, you have to go through hard times to even realize what the good times were. You know, we have to have that, and it's that perfect balance. So go ahead.
If you only do good things, it's kind of like that dopamine. You just need more and more good things to feel good. It doesn't feel good later.
And so let's say like you keep doing that, and we were saying the glass that we're filling. Does that glass change its size?
Yeah, based on
does it adjust to what? Since you're just saying, if you keep eating, your stomach expands and gets bigger and changes. Right. Your organs will change size. So does this dopamine metaphor cup expand its size and just grow with your...
So you got to keep feeding it with more and different
that's where
addictions.
Addiction really takes over people's lives badly. And then they get out of the addiction and that cup shrinks, but then they go back to that same level of addiction they had if they have a fallout or a relapse.
It expands again. Yes, it's called neuroplasticity. Our brain changes based on like the more often we use things. It's use dependent. So if you focus on growing that cup, the cup gets bigger.
Right.
If you focus on shrinking the cup gets smaller. The hardest part about this is like, I can't say this word, but I'll say it wrong. Like the dopaminergic. I can't say it, like the brain's reinforcement system.
Hilarious.
Like, there are certain things we do with substances that destroy it. Like the one that I know like is most profound is meth.
Right.
Doing meth makes it so you'll be chronically bored for about 2 years until, like, if you get addicted to meth, it takes about 2 years for you to feel any enjoyment again.
Damn.
Yikes. Really? Why would you do that?
Because you get all the enjoyment right now, it expands that
You get
cup.
2 years worth of enjoyment in like a hit or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yes.
A trip or what.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. No, thank you. No, thank you, man. That is crazy. So like if you're someone in addictive and you're filling that cup, you know, like, people fill it with whatever their vice is, whether that's, you know, alcohol or food or buying stuff. You know, I know consumerism is a real, you know, money addiction. You know, if I'm going out
Or gambling.
or gambling, God, the sports betting is so bad in this country now, man. It's
awesome.
Everywhere.
I love it.
I know. Yeah, you bet $20, but could you imagine if you had I think about that all the time. If I had like a smartphone at 17 years old with a sports betting app, or like 19, like I got my first credit card and when I went to Bloomington, maxed that thing out in like 3 days, didn't pay it off, you know, correct my credit score, you know, it's such terrible impulsive decisions at a young age when you're illegally an adult. I couldn't even imagine, you know, the temptations as a young person nowadays are endless.
For me, I've been sports gambling for a long time, even when it was illegal. I had a way that I place bets, so I have an experience with it. You know, it's something where when something like this, all of a sudden, it's like, all you have to do is download an app, and you have people who've never done it, and they're just jumping into
That's
it.
what I'm saying.
And then you get a couple wins, and that's why these companies will give you free bets,
Free money,
and free money,
yeah,
and these things that for you to jump in, and you're getting people who don't have this experience of loss and understanding that when you lose. Because I mean, we spend a lot of time in casinos too.
Yeah.
And so when you lose, the reality is you're not going to get it back.
The gamification.
Yeah, sure. There's a slight chance. There's people who have done it, but let's be real. It's not going to happen. And so having that, knowing like, all right, I lost. I'm done. I'm walking away. I'm not going to keep chasing this and try to, oh, well, if I make this bet, I'll get all that. No, you lost. It's okay. You lost.
Yeah, those guys can't think about
Say
it
goodbye.
at a young age. Your brain's not even fully formed yet.
When you get that as a brand new experience where you're just coming in, it's like, oh, well, I put $100 in and this company gave me $200 free to spend. Oh, man, okay, all right. And now you're wanting to put $200 in every week.
Yeah.
Now you're wanting,
I can make a bigger bet with their free money. Yay.
Yeah. So yeah,
I know we were talking about dopamine earlier too, and I
Yeah.
told Josh the other day that I think maybe Mason said this, and when we were talking in our D&D chat one night, like during a break or maybe before we started, Dave, that phones and like apps, the scrolling function of that. The proliferation of that is due to like the dopamine hit that you get in like a casino machine, and that's why you see like the Facebook and the Instagram and everything's a scrolling feature, because every time you hit that screen, you're like, ding, give me the drug, ding.
Well, it's also why I don't hit a lot of likes and stuff, because I don't care about what it is. It's just something different.
It's
something
content.
new. I don't know what's coming, you know. And
I'm real bad about that.
Yeah.
I'm doom scrolling.
Yeah.
I doom scroll with the best of them.
You are being trained to do that.
Yeah.
So can I get into like the psychology behind
Please.
the Facebooks, the TikToks, like all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
The strongest kind of reinforcement to train human behavior is something called intermittent reinforcement, which means you don't get the hit every time.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while you get it, right?
Yeah.
That'll make you try all the time.
Right.
If you get the hit every time, you'll get bored of the hit and you'll walk away from it.
Sure.
So one of the things they do is they make sure that not every video is one that you like. And as a matter of fact, think about what we know. The brain wants little yuck things to make the nice things better.
Right.
They intentionally put videos in the feed that they know you will not like to make less interesting videos more interesting.
So much lately.
Even though they sell the idea to let us, we're trying to build an algorithm to give you what it is you like. Give us this
they
information.
Keep you on
you
that
like
edge.
this post?
They keep you right on that edge.
Yeah. Do you want to see more posts like this? When really they want to know the answer so they can do the complete opposite of what your answer is.
Or they already know your answer. They want to see what makes you interact.
Sure. Yeah. What keeps you on there
Yeah.
more? Yeah. Would you like to know more? Yes.
Yeah. And so like the other things that they do is it's not like happenstance that they made the action of scrolling part of mimicry to slot machines.
Right. Yeah. That's what was really
Like
fascinating.
you're pulling down, you're scrolling down, because the action has been paired, just like that rat with the smell, with like addictive things for some people.
Right.
They are, it is, and the whole time you're looking at this, you are getting dopamine. It is triggered hyperfocus, and you're getting intermittent reinforcement at a frequency that stops norepinephrine from evaluating what you're doing.
Right. So you don't have the manager anymore. It's just all dopamine all the time. Let's go. Get it, get it, get it, get it.
And then what happens when you get the deer or get the package?
Right. It's over.
Dopamine goes away.
Yeah, it's gone. Now
So
you
the
got to
doom
start
scrolling
again.
doesn't give you anything.
Yeah. Now you got to start all over again and start the pattern again to get the filled cup again. Yeah, that's crazy.
The part about doom scrolling though, Jared, that I need to validate for you is you do like you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Like you don't. So like I'm a behavior specialist that like has gone to understand brain. I've learned psychodynamic psychotherapy, CBT, DBT, blah blah blah. I'm like, I'm going to check this TikTok out. I'm gonna avoid liking anything. I'm not gonna follow a single person. I want to see how this algorithm learns me. I'm gonna not skip any videos except for ones that show sex or violence. Okay. And it showed me everything, like little kid videos, like what toy am I gonna pull out of this hat? I'm like, oh, this is weird. I don't know why I'm watching this. I'm like, did you guess the blue one? It's the blue one. And I'm like, what the hell is this? All right, but I'm watching the video, so I'm not giving TikTok any data. Over the year or 6 months that I had TikTok, I spent more and more time watching it. It was more and more reinforcing. Right. I didn't realize what a problem it was. One Saturday morning, I woke up and I'm like, lazy day. I got nothing I'm going to do. I'm going to have myself some coffee and I'm going to scroll a little bit on that old TikTok. And then I'm going to go to the hardware store and I'm going to get this one thing that I need before 6.
Yeah.
I look up and it's dark and it's 6:15. And I've been on TikTok for 6 hours. I have built-in strategies to not let this happen. I am a therapist that understands like the insidious nature of this, and it got me.
Right.
I deleted it that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
you can't, like, there's no fair play with that thing.
That's what I'm about to drop Reddit off my phone now. I think I'm going to do it tomorrow, actually, because I found myself, like, before doing D&D prep and stuff, and, doing prep for the podcast as well, thinking about content and questions for today's episode and stuff. And I would just find myself, someone will text me or hit a message in the Discord, and, I'm, like, writing stuff down in my notebook for D&D or, with the podcast, and then I'll get a message, and then I get on my phone, and then I'll just realize like 3 hours have passed. I've just wasted all of that time. I didn't get anything done. I was just kind of jacking around in the chats, scrolling on the side. I'm just like, God, I got to get rid of that. I'd be ultimately so much more productive in my life to just get rid of that. Because I got rid of Facebook when I got hacked. And then when I did, I never missed it. Like 6 weeks later, I was like, oh God, like that place was a hellscape. And I hope that it's the same with Reddit, because I got to get rid of it. I'm taking in way too much content and way too much screen time.
And Dave, and you were saying you had plans put in place to prevent this from happening.
Structures, yeah.
And structure is a massive thing when it comes to ADHD, especially. So one thing I want to hear your thoughts on, and we're going to have two here that kind of piggyback with each other. So I know there's some people who are going to listen who maybe they don't have ADHD, but their child does, or their brother does, or there's somebody. So I want to try to go over some things that help people get more of an understanding on what the person's dealing with. So maybe we have more of an understanding on how to handle certain situations. So one thing I really like, and I've heard you talk about, and I really like your view on, is the power struggles with people with ADHD, because that also kind of piggybacks off the dopamine. It's a dopamine chase. But I also, with that, want to hear, speaking of putting structures in place, the monster parts. I think this is such a cool thing, and I think it kind of goes with the power struggle thing. So yeah, go ahead and give us your thoughts and on that.
Like when you said the monster parts, I got like the chills, because it's so real.
Tell people what those are if they don't know what they are.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, tell people what the monster parts are if they may not know.
The way people can fight, how nasty it can actually get. Mm-hmm. It's not all peaches and cream and roses. There's some thorns here.
Yeah.
Things that make dopamine happen. I'm just going to run through a couple things so we'll have context for this. Mm-hmm. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, carbohydrates, the idea of winning, and the act of debate and risky behavior.
Okay.
The process of debate gives you dopamine. Whether you win or lose doesn't give you dopamine. The act of arguing does.
Right.
The act of arguing and winning does. Doesn't matter about being right.
Mm-hmm.
The act of being risky gives you dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we integrate all these things, when you are in a power struggle with somebody with ADHD, think about how inappropriate they can get.
Yeah.
They will go for the throat before they've realized they've gone for the throat.
Right.
Well,
0 to 60 immediately.
Well, that's one thing you hear a lot with ADHD is that they don't have that long-term consequence thought. They don't
Filters,
they don't
yeah.
understand the long-term consequences of what they just understand what they want right now and how angry they are right now.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, another way of saying it is like the part of the brain that like response cost part, they don't totally understand the consequences of their actions later on down the road.
Right.
So they know that they got angry. They won't really understand what that anger does to another person's want to do something with them.
Right.
And so what we know is a lot of people, this is like, I'll just be this blunt. If you have someone in your family with ADHD, like maybe think about whether or not you do too.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's highly genetic, right? This is around evolution, not de-evolution.
Sure.
And so like, I've seen people who aren't aware that they have ADHD get really sucked into power struggles with their kids because they're both going to be reinforced by winning. They're both going to be reinforced by the active debate. They're both going to not want to be able to drop that thing. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
So I avoid, like, there are certain places when you're dealing with someone who has ADHD that you cannot win, and to try to win is not the point.
Yeah.
So
What would be the point, I guess?
Like whatever the task is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, when you get home today, whatever you do, I want you to take off your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But like, I'm going to tell you again in 5 minutes, what are you going to do when you get home today? And they're going to be like, I'm going to take off my shoes. It's like, cool. And before we leave, what are you going to do? I'm going to take off my shoes right before I get home. And then you're driving them to school, and before they get out of the car, you're like, what are you going to do today when you get home? Like, I'm going to take off my shoes. And then they run into class, right? Mm-hmm. You've prepped them. You've done all the interventions, and you're going, they're going to listen to me.
It's going to happen.
They're going to integrate all of these messages. And when they get home, they're going to take off their shoes, mm-hmm. right? And then kid comes home from school. They've had like a full day of school. They've talked with their friends. Mm-hmm. They've had disappointments. They've had heartache. They've had wins. They've had losses. And then they run home to tell you all that. The door opens. Hey, and you. And then you go, what were you supposed to do when you got home?
Take
right?
Me.
And that's when the kid who has ADHD, their visual spatial memory, which is much higher than other people's, comes back and they remember every moment you told them that. And for the life of them, they don't understand why they couldn't bring all those memories back before they walked in the house.
Right.
And so if you were expecting your ADHD kid to like put it all together because you gave them 30 warnings, you would be setting them up for failure.
Right.
So you'd be like, take off your shoes tonight when you get home. It's like, okay, cool. And then you go, they're not going to remember. So I'm going to pick them up and I'm going to tell them before I get out of the car.
Right. And there's your solution. Yeah.
That's and now you're not engaging in shame. Why would you forget? Why don't you care about us? Right. All of a sudden it gets contemptuous, mm-hmm. and it triggers the winning because you're mean. Now I just want to get meaner than you. And now there's a fight. And now we're just going to go back and forth.
Yeah. And now we're just feeding off of each other. Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting.
The frequency of the consequence is more important than the severity.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, going hard on somebody one time won't necessarily instill them to not do it again. It's being consistent and just kind of, reinforcing multiple times that'll really get them to buy in and understand or follow or whatever that might be. Huh.
Because the more explosive it is, the more risky it is. And then if it's super explosive and then sometimes they get away with it, you're creating intermittent reinforcement. Right. Sometimes they get away with it.
Right.
And so like what I know is it's like the more consistency we can have, the more structure we can have. And then when we're dealing with friends or kids or loved ones, like there's a technique that I live with that I really think helps a lot. The technical term for it is called DRO, which means differential reinforcement of the other. Blah, 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 blah. What that means is it makes the behavior incompatible. So like what you're really going to focus on is if you want someone to stop biting their nails, you focus on them wearing gloves. You don't try to remind them every 5 minutes to stop biting their nails. That's a fight. That's a power struggle. You focus on helping them wear the gloves because they can't bite their nails if they have their gloves on. It makes it incompatible.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Solutions as opposed to attacking the problem itself is.
But it's also just understanding.
Yeah.
And having an understanding, you have to understand something first before you even think of ways of solving it, and so.
That was what was revelatory for me, that when I finally found out, like I've been going on and on about, I always thought something was physically wrong with me. When I finally realized that it was something mental, it was just like, oh.
Okay. Well, now I know that. Now
that information now informs my, decisions and, how I feel moving forward. And that was very enlightening to me because I thought I was like dying and wasting away. Like, why am I dying? Why do I feel terrible? My whole life is ending. This is awful. And then I was like, oh, my brain is bad right now. Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
I have an explanation.
Wait, Jared, can I jump on that for a second? It's got to validate like something that like you're really talking about that lots of people feel.
Mm-hmm.
When people get anxious, it's a massive nervous system like experience. I mean, whether we're talking about your guts, whether we're talking about like your head, any part of your body can get sore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh crap! Oh, I lost where I was going to go with this. Hold on. Got it. Okay. There's physical consequences to anxiety,
right?
But what everyone's teaching people in therapy is when you're anxious, you need to calm down.
Right.
Take some deep breaths,
mm-hmm.
lower your heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using the voice that like therapists will coach people in when they're trying to get them to calm down.
Soothing, yes.
The dilemma is your nervous system is going 1,000 miles an hour, right? So let's think about this like a hot pan.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take a hot pan and throw it in ice cold water, what happens?
It warps.
That messes up. Like if you're telling someone who's super anxious to calm down, that's a painful like it's not a possible experience.
Right.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm taking a deep breath. Like it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. It's
so like
not useful.
No. And what I wish we could like, because people don't engage in therapy more often, because like people who aren't mental health experts are on, TikTok telling people what to do. You don't hear messages like, go for a run, meet the speed that the inside of your body has with the outside. Because then your body is used to calming down from a run. It knows how to calm you down when your heart's beating fast. It doesn't know what to do when there's an existential threat that's following you and you're going to die in your brain, but not in the real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Having and also just being able to accept the way you're feeling isn't wrong.
That's been important for me.
But there are some way. But figure some things out. Try some things. Figure out what works for you.
Right.
And I mean, because we were saying about trying to match that speed. We all do that especially when it comes to music. I mean, if you're working out, you want the music to match that mentality and that speed of the workout. If you're just sitting around hanging out and it's just a really chill vibe, the music, I mean, and like a nice restaurant, where everything's real chill, the music matches that, so it's, so that is that's really just like a human thing that we kind of react to. When it's these different energies.
I have bad, obviously, issues with anxiety. It manifests all in my gut. You guys have seen, obviously, the Yellowstone trip. I get physically ill when I get anxious, and I'll throw up like a dozen times. And what has really worked for me is like you said, I get in the middle of those anxiety attacks or those panic attacks in the mornings when I would be really bad. And it's just like, there's no calming down. Once you've crossed that threshold, you're on for the ride, So what has really helped for me is to just understand that that's part of my body and my life.
Yes.
And do I like it when it happens? Hell no, I despise it. But I try to minimize it in my brain now, like, okay, I wake up in the morning, I feel terrible, I may get sick. Yes, that might happen. I got to reconcile that with myself, But I just like, I try to get up and like, okay, I feel pretty bad this morning. Let's start my day. I'm doing my shower, have your breakfast or whatever, start your day. Do you go through your routine? You walk your dogs? And in my mind, the whole time, I'm just like, trying to minimize it. Just, hey, just like focus on my day. Here's what I'm going to do. The dogs are okay. And I'm just trying to, while my heart is just thump, 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 and my guts are just, rah, 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 and I feel like I'm right on the cusp of vomiting any moment, but I'm just like, you're all right, man, you can do this, just like telling myself that over and over and over.
Well, there's the artist Ren, he released a song where he plays two different parts, and one of them is his imposter syndrome and one of them's him, and he's talking to this imposter syndrome. But at the end of the song, he talks about, he kind of just speaks on his mental health and how he had these few years of really bad. And what he learned was that he's not going to beat it. He doesn't get better, but it's this eternal dance is what he calls it. And you have to learn the steps to that eternal dance.
It's just part of you, man.
Yeah,
You gotta
it's a part of you. It's who you are.
You accept it, man.
It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just, this is the way it is.
You're not broken because of it. It took me a long time to feel that way. When I first was into the deepest, like I would constantly say to my first therapist, what do I need to do to be normal again? I would always say that, and he's like, what's normal? He'd be like, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm not normal. You're not normal. No one's normal. And I'm just like, why do I feel this way? How do I feel normal again? He's like, you've never felt normal. You're just feeling more abnormal now.
I think this is where I want to bring up those rat babies.
Yeah.
Imagine releasing that smell. All those rat babies freak out. And one of them sitting there with a brain going, there's nothing scary in here. I shouldn't be freaking out, but I'm freaking, but there's no threat. Like that part of it, the validation of like, I'm upset for a reason I don't understand, creates way more peace there. Mm-hmm. And I think like, I care about you and we can cut this out. But I would say like having a trauma trigger epigenetic history is a really intense, terrifying thing for a human being.
Yeah, man.
And like, like someone should have looked at you and been like, there is a burned out, bombed place in your soul that is always going to be burned and bombed out, but there's a lot more real estate, and you can decide what you want to do with that hole. Because Normandy looks like a cool place now, but like didn't for a long time.
Sure. Yeah. And that's it, just finding the things in yourself that you can be proud of and love, and just accepting yourself for who you are, man. It took me a really, really long time to be there.
Jared, I know you though, and the part that I want to make sure I'm saying in front of the world and whatever is like the amount of courage that I saw you push through, the amount of pain that I watched you tolerate to be there for people and be there for yourself and doing everything you thought you needed to do. Like, man, I saw it, and like I'm in awe of like what that must have been like.
I appreciate that.
And I want to like shift just for a second, Josh, and just say something to you because I just keep hearing this theme, right? I was in grad school with my professor, Dr. Citronbaum. This dude was like awesome. And this topic came up around self-authorization. And he's like, man, all of life is about self-authorization. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we wait to be authorized to do things that we will never be authorized to do. Mm-hmm. And what I learned through that, and like as I became like a TA and then I was like teaching classes, I realized like when I was in front of that class, like they all thought that I was like knowing exactly what I was doing, and I had no idea what I was doing until I did it more than once.
Yeah.
And I think like we are all imposters. And I think the belief that we're not supposed to be there is so hard. And I think it just needs to be confronted with self-authorization. No one deserves to be anywhere. Why not me?
Right.
So even before every time I come here to the studio, I sit in the car and I go through a thing. So there's a comedian who's gotten pretty big. His name's Andrew Schultz. And what's great about comedians and a lot of these entertainers, what I love about them when they get like real and personal and are vulnerable, he struggles with imposter syndrome. And this guy's selling out 3 nights at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, big
like
comic.
He's a big comic, but he still has to sit in the back green room before his shows and tell himself that he deserves to be here.
Right.
That this is everything he's worked for. This is everything he's earned. Also the same with Maynard from Tool. I mean, before he goes out on stage, he throws up He has terrible sicknesses, but he gets through it. And you see him on stage, and you're like, "Wait,
this dude's
that
a
guy.
legend,
That guy
dude.
was puking. Like, look at him. He's playing this character. He's all over the like. He's putting on this show, and it's like he was terrified to come out here and do this. So that's one thing I take from Andrew Schultz's book. So even before coming in here, I tell myself, like, there's people who want to hear what we have to say today. This podcast may not be changing the world, but there's somebody out there who wants to hear it. It gets them through maybe their shitty day on that Wednesday. They're looking forward to having Jared make fun of me or me make fun of him or us say something that just makes them laugh. There's people, there's somebody, and it might just be one person, but that person wants to hear it and it matters to them.
Yeah, definitely
so that
matters.
helps me get out of that thing, like, because it's where you sit here and it's like, man, who the fuck wants to hear this?
Right.
Like, who really wants to hear me talk about getting food poisoning on a disc golf course? And then I put it out, and then I have my friends and I have people reach out and be like, hey man, that was funny. I actually a couple weeks ago shit myself. And it's like, okay, so we're validating that this stuff happens. This is just who we are. It's funny. It's not to be taken
Just
serious.
be real, man,
Yeah.
and don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah.
So for me and what I deal with, I have also come up with and found ways of handling it and structures. Yeah.
Yeah, structures
The
in my
weirdest
life,
thing about that, and I love that episode too, because it's like, you're talking about like the best diet workout plan, like you lost so much weight and get so sick, right? But like the one thing that I know to be true is like, and this is me as a therapist, I've heard lots of stories. Like, it's very easy to be like, everyone has shit their pants in their life because you were all kids. And so we all immediately think like, of course, I was in a diaper, we'll call diaper pants, I shit my pants, right? No. Everyone as an adult shits their pants. I know this. And if you're like, not me, then I'm like, it will happen.
Yeah.
You're on the clock, bro.
It's the normal part of life, and no one talks about it.
You're
So
one
really happy that you
salmonella
did.
poisoning away, pal, of the dirty sprinkler where you're too
Yeah,
far
which is
away
the
from the bathroom.
Bad 2 or 3 days.
Man, dog, that's no
And,
doubt.
and this isn't me saying adult men.
Yeah.
I'm saying every adult.
Yeah.
will
Every
shit their
adult.
pants if they haven't already.
It's
It'll
part
happen.
of life. It's something we're all going to go through.
It's gonna
Don't take
happen.
it serious. Like,
Just, you got
so one more thing I want to listen to or want to talk about. So now that we've gone through all this, a big thing when it comes, especially to mental health, seeing therapists and things like that, you normally eventually may be getting onto medication. My personal problem, and I know this is a big problem you have, and this is why I'm asking you, is that when it comes to medication, we're told what the medication is supposed to kind of do, but we're really not told on how it does that. And so there's cases where you could be given medication and be like, you know what, I feel so much better, but it's still not the right medication. And just because it's making you feel right or it's fixed these one little problems, there's still, it could be not the right one. So what I want to ask you, when it comes to ADHD medication, it comes to Adderall, what is that medication actually doing? Not because what we think is like, I've heard you say this a lot, is that you get someone on Adderall, and my wife is, I remember her in college taking Adderall. She's like, man, I got so much done, but in reality, no, you didn't. There's this other aspect to it, and what is that?
Okay, so this is instead of Adderall, can I like take a step back and say stimulant-based interventions for ADHD, whether we're talking about Ritalin or Adderall, right, or Focalin or like all that stuff? We'll put it all under the same camp for a second.
It's a stimulant either way.
Yeah, it's a stimulant intervention. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple things that those medications do, and like this is where I want to say, like, I am a believer of medical intervention for ADHD because it is a medical difference. Like, you don't have to have the intervention, right? But like, it would be like trying to muscle through without glasses.
Right.
And I think people need to learn like what the medicine does. So if I am not, like, a couple of things that ADHD medicine does is it increases stimulation. That's benign. Everyone has their own like dance with it. And it increases your appraisal of what you've done marginally. So it makes you think better about the thing that you've done. Now, if a neurotypical or a normal person takes ADHD medicine, stimulation hits. So whether they interpret that as anxiety or excitement, that's the neurotypical person. We don't know, right?
Right.
But they will believe that that is the best paper that they've ever written, best picture they've ever taken, best cleaning job they've ever done, most productive they've ever been, because the appraisal thing is there.
Right.
In reality, it is just as good as it always does for like a neurotypical person. They just feel better about it. Okay.
That's interesting.
But if we were going to an ADHD person, they have been trained to have a negative outlook on what they do.
Right.
So the increased appraisal normalizes appraisal.
I see.
Doesn't make it exaggeratedly high.
Mm-hmm.
And the stimulant for an ADHD person, like this is where it gets really interesting. People with ADHD, I'm going to like spoil this, they self-medicate all the time. And I'm not talking about coffee, and I'm not talking about risky behavior. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Central nervous system like stimulants are interventions for ADHD. Please tell me what happens to your nervous system when you're angry, when you're anxious, when you're excited, or when you're aroused. What happens? Is your heartbeat slower or faster?
Faster.
So people who are ADHD will like have their heartbeat faster as a way to self-medicate if they are doing benign, non-stimulating, boring tasks.
And that comes then with the not sitting still and things like
Their
that.
ticks and stems or
But
whatever. Yeah.
But like this is where if you don't have medicine, you have to have a feeling to make so these fucking socks. I got a pair of these socks, or like I can't wait to get through this. It'll be great. Like whatever that feeling is, the person has to learn to access it. And most people with ADHD, if they haven't had interventions, go to anxiety or anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take the medication, which is a stimulant, like why would we give someone cocaine? Now you're seeing it. The stimulant happens absent the emotion. You don't have to get angry or anxious to have your heartbeat fast.
Right.
So all of a sudden it increases focus for a person without the distracting feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Interesting.
for ADHD people, it can be glasses. And like it is one of those things where people have a stigma about what medication does, what it doesn't do. Is it healthy? Is it not? And for me, I think about like, are you experiencing negative consequences because of how angry you get or how anxious you get?
Mm-hmm.
And people don't like it, or you're finding yourself getting into fights, or you're ditching work more than you want. Then I would look at medication.
Yeah.
If you found a great way to like work out 3 times a day, you eat super clean, you run around, you stay really busy, and you go to sleep and you don't have any problems, don't take medicine. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
But if you're in pain,
yeah, it's like what we said. Like you're not going to be fixed. There's no fixing ADHD, but you figure out who you and ADHD is different to everybody. I mean, one thing works for one person with ADHD. That's all it did is it worked for one person, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
it took me like 3 years to find a schedule of meds that worked for me because my anxiety was taking over my life. And I was like, you know, I'm trying all these different things. I'm having these horrible side effects, you know, with your libido, your appetite, your sleep, your weights yo-yo. And then you're just like trying to find, you know, what side effects can I take? And it's, like 2-3 years, you know, and it takes months for your brain chemistry to change too. So that's what I'm always telling my brother, man. He's just like, he'll take his meds for like 2 months and then like get off of them because he's not working or whatever. And I'm like, no wonder your brain's fried, bro. Even like you're up, you're down, you're on, you're off. Like regulate yourself, man. You'll be good.
there's this Winston Churchill quote that I kind of like, which is like, and he's complicated, so we don't have to get into Churchill, but I'm just saying like, the quote is like, if you're fighting and you find yourself in the middle of hell, for God's sake, don't stop there.
Right.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it was, man. I just had to crawl my way out of there, dude.
Yeah.
I'm still, like I said, I fight it all the time, man. I'm in therapy. I'm still on my meds. You know, I deal with, anxiety and depression and, some other things. And that's okay, because my life's okay right now. I play D&D with my buds. I got a cool podcast with my friends here, so I'm in a pretty good place right now. I was real bad when I first moved back to during COVID. I left LA. I just had back surgery, man. I'd failed out in LA. I was down. I was hurt physically. I was hurt mentally, man. I was in a bad way, son. Bad
Part
way.
of and I think it's important for us to be able to be vulnerable with each other. That's a really important part of healing and what men are trained not to do.
That's what I'm
saying.
I
think
I'm trying to nip that in the
a big
bud.
part of me being vulnerable with you, Jared, is my job. I love what I do for a living. I love being a trauma therapist. I love being an ADHD therapist. I love doing the things that I do, speaking and training, but my work is really intense at times. And there's a lot of risk and I love attending to it. And by the way, I also really love my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared, you are part of some really restorative self-care for me because a couple times a week, we sit down for hours and problem solve about things that even if it results in death, it doesn't hurt my life.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough for like giving me a playground and being there for that playground. It really helps me in the world.
I'm glad you joined the game, man. You make it much more robust having you as a player. You're an excellent part of the game.
Jim always talked highly about.
He loved having you in the game.
When you joined, man.
He was so happy to have you in the game.
Yeah, he always talked about how much of a
because you buy in, and that's what the game's all about. If you buy in and you enjoy it and you get in there and you're all about the buy-in, man. So you make the game that much more.
Everybody
much more
in
robust.
the game makes the game what it is. Man.
It's great.
It's like walking into a doctor's office. It's whatever energy you got is what the whole office is going to give back to you in a sense.
It's very important for me too, for sure.
The feelings I just had when you guys said Jen is like so real that I got to speak to for a second. Like I met him for not enough time. I needed to know him longer in my life. I'm jealous of everyone that did.
Yeah.
It was a gift to be able to like be with him. And like his energy is really like energy that I like being with, but like, I also didn't know if he hated me or liked me after a couple weeks. It's like,
that's the same impression he gave to a lot of people.
We always said Jim hated everybody. He just hated his friends a little less.
Yeah. That's part of being a Vogel.
That is part of being a Vogel.
Yeah. But because he was so, I think, specific and the way he talked about narrative and story in life, I know that he didn't mince words. Yeah. And so like to hear that he talked highly about the way I played D&D, like that just made me tear up. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Jim said something nice about me when I wasn't there. I'm taking that to the bank.
Yeah, for sure.
I got the total opposite because my character got killed. And we had one day where I couldn't get on a play. He got mad at me about it. So I was like, oh, fuck it. My character's dead then. And I just never went back and played. So then he just gave me shit for the next years after all that, So I got the opposite end of it. So he just wanted people to play,
Yeah, he loved playing.
So we'll get close here to wrap. But we posted on our social media and just asked people, told them that we were having you, and if they had any questions, if this is stuff that they've dealt with, to question, ask questions for free. You don't have to
some free therapy here.
And I told everybody you'd be more than happy to. But our friend Mari Helen from Nevins, she used to come in on the Sundays. You remember Mari? She put in a question here for you. She said, I'm nearing my 40s and beginning to question whether I have ADHD, as others with the condition have pointed it out behaviors to me. It seems like such an effort to get diagnosed, and considering I've spent so long managing as is, my question for Dave is, what are the benefits of getting your ADHD diagnosis as an adult?
It's a great question. And Mari, like, oh my God. So the populations that are often ignored and misdiagnosed with ADHD, women and any non-white person. The stereotypical like image of what ADHD is like an adolescent white kid. Yeah. And like all the things we look at like to normalize that, like, it's hard. And women have this incredible amount of social pressures and social like hoops to jump through, that the pieces that are normalized for ADHD are like normal that make you a bad woman. And so it's easy to hide parts of that or just think like, I'm just a lazy one or I'm not a good one. And you don't see any of the behaviors as part of ADHD. You just see them as part of you being a bad person. And so in your 40s, nearing your 40s, at any point in time in life, what I notice people is, number one, if you think you have ADHD, I would go see your primary care doctor. I'm going to keep saying this. This is a medical issue.
Right.
Like if there is a lot of complicated psychology, go see your psychiatrist for sure. But talk to your actual doctor.
Yeah.
Because it's, and if your doctor is like, this is complicated, you might want a neuropsych. There's hoops and testing. But what I've seen the medication do for people, whether it's, and I'm sorry, I sound like a med person, right?
No.
Even the awareness of what the diagnosis is and how you fit into it, I've seen that change people's lives.
Yeah.
Like people in their 50s saying things like, I read books now, which they can't admit to anyone.
Yeah.
But me. But like all of a sudden they see life totally different. Or I can get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Or like, is it really this easy for everyone? I feel like I'm cheating. And like, what I will tell you is most people with ADHD, when they find an intervention that works for them, whether it's medication, whether it's therapy, whether it's just insight, the first thing they do is, I probably don't have ADHD. I'm cheating. This would help anyone.
Right. Yeah.
And literally my job as a therapist to be like, interventions are, it shows that this doesn't help neurotypical people, like marginally, like it doesn't help them.
Yeah.
It really does help you. Like, what does it feel like to have experienced societal neglect and have it finally attended to?
Yeah. I'm sure it's revelatory. It's like, yeah, it's
Oh,
opening
also
your
people are
eyes
like,
for
why
the
did
first
people
time.
not see me when I was younger? And it's like, now we have to do that work.
Yeah. Right. Let's put this on the list. Yeah.
But Mari, like the worst thing that would happen is you find out you don't have ADHD. It's something else. You work towards that. Or you find out it is, and all of a sudden, like circle gets the circle instead of a square, and everything makes sense now.
Everything
like,
makes sense. Yeah.
Please go check that out. It's
that's what for me.
totally
Like I
worth
said,
it.
yeah, I thought I was physically ill. When I found out it was mentally ill, that tempered my expectation moving forward for getting help and made me, much more responsive to get it. Like I was going through all these physical tests and I was tubes and blood work and blah blah blah, and it's just like, oh, I should go to therapy and like group, maybe 3 times a week for a year or 2, and that's what I did, and it worked.
It's and I want to get to the other questions. I'm so sorry, but like Mari, this is the other thing I'd say. Like maybe you organize in piles. You don't know you're organizing in piles, but maybe you got a stack of mail and a stack of magazines and a stack of this. And like there's organization because this is bills or this is new mail and this is old mail, but there are piles. And those piles come about with ADHD because object permanence is an issue. When things go into drawers, they disappear. So people naturally have things messy all over their house. They don't want to change things, but we're taught to think that we're bad people. We can't be organized. Like there are so many things that I wish I could just validate for you. We don't have time, but like that's why understanding reduces suffering.
That's great. Yeah, that reminds me of a couple other of my good buddies that I hope are listening on this.
Yeah. So our buddy Rowett, who you guys talk a lot.
Yeah, you guys are close friends.
So one thing
Love Row.
One thing I want to go through. This will be the last thing, but I met you guys in Chicago. We went and played disc golf. You two were talking about this, and I didn't really butt into it because it obvious to me that this had been a conversation that had been going on, and you guys are continuing on or whatever. But I found it fascinating later in time when I asked Ro kind of what you guys were talking about. So the idea of reality. Okay. So the subconscious and delusional behavior, how are they connected? And what is the difference between a delusion and a dream?
I want to have we need a much longer conversation about that. I think like when we're talking about real delusions, when we're talking about really intense behaviors, we are talking about the judgment of a belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you fight a delusion, the more entrenched it becomes. The more you fight a belief somebody has, the more they will believe it. When we are talking about the idea of a dream, it doesn't involve belief. It can be destroyed. I think that this is where, for people who are dealing with schizophrenia or schizophrenia, the best way to think about it is like the ventricles or the way that their brain communicates, it's better than ours, not worse. They have way bigger highways. They process way more information. And so when they have a dream, it can look real, which crosses over into a delusion.
Right.
And where does that come from? Is that like a information virus? Is that kind of like
So this is where that's a great question too. So the way our brains make up information is most of what we see in the world is assumptive. It's not real. And so right now I'm looking at you guys, like I'm really looking at the helmet, and I can see like a red shirt and like a blue shirt on either side of you. But in reality, there's a lot of information even in the room that I'm in that like I can't really see. But when I think about the peripheral, like it's kind of hazy, but I can you guys look at on the peripheral right now, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're not actually seeing anything. That's all guessed. The brain is like a JPEG putting it there. The moment you look at it, it becomes real. Your brain makes it there. Right. So hallucinations for some people are around like the processing errors, of what isn't there. Does that make sense? Like, that's the
just bad
hallucination.
information.
Like, we don't really most of what our jobs, our brain's job is forgetting and ignoring things.
That's so interesting.
you can't forget. Our life gets really complicated. You would have a hard time differentiating any day or any breakfast or any lunch.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
that's why they say those
so,
people with
and
like
like
photographic
there's so much
memories
to
are,
actually
like,
attend to.
so depressed.
If you attended to it, you wouldn't be able to really function. And so when we look at the spectrum, or we look at like schizophrenia, the more noise in the environment, the more loud, the more lights, all those other things increases the probability for, in terms of autism, it's almost like a pixelated screen. It's harder to understand the world. And in the context of schizophrenia, you start seeing faces or things happening because there's too much information for the brain to give you the really clear picture.
That's the brain is a wild.
It's
place,
just so
man.
powerful, man.
It is a wild place that we don't.
I
even
always knew my
understand it.
brain was strong. I always had a very vivid imagination as a young kid.
I did too.
I always would have like imaginary friends. I read a lot of books when I was really young, at a very young age, like heavier books like Lord of the Rings. I read when I was like probably 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
that's a big book.
it's
for
a
that.
pretty book,
That's a
yeah,
big
for a
book.
fifth grader, you know. And I'm start reading that stuff, and like I don't do that anymore. But I don't think I had real appreciation of how powerful my brain was until I got sick, and I was like, look what my brain has done to my body and life. You know, I was like, that is incredible. It's terrible, and it's a worm-eating zombie brain. I hate it.
But give it its credit.
That's some pretty good work there, brain. You did it.
Jared, anyone that's feeling what you're feeling, I need to say there's a high correlation with intelligence and these kinds of problems, not lowered intelligence.
Right. That was my when I was in the worst of it, that was what I really had to break was I was being so analytical. I'm very solution oriented, and I'm trying to find a problem. I'm trying to fix a problem, you know, and I'm looking at all these things, and I'm reading on my own, and I'm, you know, regurgitating, you know, stuff that you're talking about to my doctor on an amateur level. And he's like, just, you need to knock it off with all that. He was like, I get it. He was like, maybe just, be a little more in touch with your emotional brain as opposed to your intelligent brain. And that was really kind of revelatory for me, because I was always just very, you know, logical, I guess.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm a more emotional person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know we got to end and wrap up. I want to make sure I'm honoring that. Can I just say a little thing, and then I'll come back if you guys ever need me? And
No, absolutely. We're going to bring you back.
You're coming
We got. I got pages.
We got to
of
do a
stuff to
D&D
talk
episode
about.
too.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, but okay. So something I want you like everyone listening to understand about therapy is like how I feel and think about my clients. Like, I'm not going to tell you who I see. I will say that I've worked with incredibly famous people and incredibly not famous people. And I don't work with someone that I don't respect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work with someone that I don't like. And therapists are trained to refer you out if you're not going to get along.
Right.
But people don't believe that. They believe they're paying you for your feelings. And that's the part that, like, everyone forgets in therapy, that they've hired the therapist. They're actually in charge.
Right.
They should be able to ask their therapist, why are we doing this? Why are you asking that question? At any point in time, you're allowed to tell a therapist, I don't believe in trust falls. Please evidence why this is important.
Yeah.
Like, you are allowed to ask, what is your diagnosis of me? What kind of notes do you have? They're allowed to be like, why is that important to you? Because that's part of the work.
Sure.
But everyone like is worried about what the therapist is going to do to them, and they forget that they're driving.
Yeah.
And like, if they don't like the therapist, I would want you to say, listen, I've been coming here for a while. I respect you as a therapist. I don't like coming here. Can we talk about like how you can refer me to someone that I would like?
Sure.
That's something I want people doing.
Yeah.
I've recently seen clients who were interviewing 3 or 4 therapists before they picked one.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm seeing 4 people right now. Like, I haven't picked one. And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, because actually how you feel about the person, if you think they're an idiot or you think they look kind of cool or you like the cut of their jib, it's like, that actually is a great predictor for how effective therapy would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a
you have to trust them.
There's a company that's getting pretty big when it comes to called BetterHelp, and that's the one thing BetterHelp does is that they say you get to pick your therapist. If you don't like the therapist, and within 24 hours they have another one, they put you in another interview until you find the one that you want.
It's like Baskin Robbins, man. Definitely search around, shop around. You know, if you get, I got lucky with my first therapist in Evanston. His name was Dr. Robert Farah. And I mean, he was great. He's the best therapist I've had. He's the standard for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I've gone through probably almost 10 since then in the 10 years. I've moved around quite a bit as well, but yeah, I mean, like, don't just hang on to somebody. I was having bad outcomes with a guy, for 3-4 months. And I just told him, I was like, look, I respect you. Thank you for the work we've done. This isn't, feeling great for me. Do you have someone after this time that you might refer me for? And he was like, I got just the guy. And like, I was with
Awesome.
that guy for another like year and a half. And that guy was great. So yeah, definitely shop around, man. We're in a capitalist society, go crazy.
Take advantage.
It's also like you guys are doing a needed intervention in terms of talking about really small town American that is often made invisible. And what I want to remind people is telehealth works. There's no magic in the room.
I haven't been in the room in years.
Yeah. So like if you're in rural places and you want to go find someone in a major city in your state, do that.
Yeah.
And typically there's more diversity of choice in major cities.
Of course,
Not better work, but more choice, which I think is important.
Sure. But there are options here for sure.
And then they have the option too where you can do video or no video. You can just do a regular phone call, or you can do face to face, however you like. So I mean, there's been a lot of companies and there's been a lot of therapists and things who are really trying to change that stigma, and they're trying to do everything
Good for them.
to make people feel comfortable.
And they should.
Because that's the first thing. It's this comfort thing, and especially, I mean, it's really hard to find being comfortable while being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And while
And it's a
having to
process.
face and admit some things that maybe have been in the back of the brain that you kind of think about yourself, but you're like, there ain't no way.
Yeah.
And having those come forward, and then you have to learn to handle that information and handle those changes and handle the reality.
I tell people to just like don't think about it like in the movie where you're gonna come in and you're gonna lay down on the couch and you're gonna have like this amazing revelatory therapy episode every single time you go. I mean, it's a process that you build towards. You're not going to come in and on the first episode sit down and be like, oh, I got molested when I was a little kid, and like I want to deal with that trouble. Yeah. You're not going to tell some stranger that. You're going to come in, you're going to tell him about your life and your job and your family and what you've been going through, your stressors and whatever, and you're going to build to the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And you may not even know what the tough stuff is.
Yeah. So yeah, it's Dave, man, we can't thank you enough for doing this. This is awesome. We're definitely going to have you back. I got a bunch of other things I want to talk about.
Great information. We could go on this all day, and it's just there's a lot of subcontext you can get into with this kind of talk, obviously. But thank you so much for your expertise and your kind words to me and to Josh, and for all the expertise you brought here for this subject. I know it's near and dear to your heart, and certainly to mine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you guys so much for having me and like doing this podcast and trying to make a very scary thing feel safer. Like whatever I can do to help. And thank you so much for having me.
yeah, no worries. Go ahead and plug your podcast if you like, and anything else you got going on.
Man, I'm so bad at the plugging part. Okay.
Shameless plugging.
If you're looking for more information about ADHD, please check out the podcast, Something Shiny, a podcast about ADHD.
Nice.
That I do with Isabella Richards. And it's two therapists talking about ADHD who have ADHD in a very non-judgmental, informative way.
And I love it. The thing I love the most about it too, or one of the things I love the most about it too, is that each episode's only like 20 minutes long. So it caters to the ADHD. Yep. It's brilliant.
Digestible
in that form too.
tidbits.
Yeah. And it's basically you doing some of your recordings from like your seminars and your speeches that you do and stuff like that. So like it's really cool. Like I've learned a lot. Also opened my eyes about a lot of people that I interact with that you're kind of like, oh, well, okay, now I'm starting to kind of understand some things with this person. I'm not going to say they have ADHD or whatever, but I'm looking at it. So what if they do? Okay, well, now this stuff is making sense now. Okay.
Better interact with
Yeah,
them.
it's just more of an empathy and an understanding of what someone could be possibly going through when it comes to their mental state. And just learning that a lot of the ADHD, the things that people who have this difference do, it's not intentional. None of it's intentional. And having that you have to understand that first.
Yeah.
And I think with parents who are raising children with ADHD and things like that, having this understanding that what their kid is doing is not intentional. They're not doing it to upset you. They're not doing it to ruin your day or anything like that.
It's a medical thing, like you said, like nearsightedness. That was very revelatory to me.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, this really we get some people who get some real help from this interview and this episode. It's really cool. Like I said before we started, we're not going to have a whole lot of these. So when we actually have the opportunity to teach people things and show people some useful ideas or thoughts into their life, it's awesome. It's exciting.
For sure.
So yeah, man, we love you. Thank you so much for doing this. Tell Robin we said hi. We love her.
Give our love to Robin and everybody up there in Chicago.
And we'll see you very soon, buddy.
Awesome.
Love is back. Awesome. Yeah. I love you guys. Take care. Right. And thanks everyone for listening, and go be courageous.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dave.
Right.
Awesome, guys. So, yeah, we're going to have the Melon Party hotline again. If you have any questions for Dave that you might want to ask that we can pass along, you got 317-520-3168 for the Melon Party hotline. You got your email, themelonpartypod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about the episode, or if you have any questions or anything about what we spoke about today.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on social media. We got only the two. We got them on Facebook and Instagram under the Melon Party. So, yeah. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
Peace.
Take care, guys.